for our panel. Our panel has agreed that all the formalities that they're going to do are going till about 1, but then they're going to keep going. So until between 1 and 1:15, you can grab your food and still ask questions. And that's pretty much how it is, Anna, right? Fantastic. So that you'll have them until about 1:15. So first of all, the moderator of that panel will be Anna Akopian, and the rise of AI, trends, challenges, and leading ahead is going to be her topic. Now, Anna is founder and CEO of SafeGate AI. She's been 20 plus years leading across banking, finance, technology, etc., looking at responsible, ethical AI adoption. So we can't wait to hear from you, but also from your panel members. And the panel members will be Tanya Kunze, Stephen Kowal, and Lee Hicken, and they're going to be introduced by Anna a little bit later. So enjoy this panel, get your questions ready, and let's get the conversation flowing. Give it up for Anna. Short people.
Welcome, everyone. Now I know why everyone is hot. There's too many lights here. We would like to cover a hot topic that everyone is talking about. Whether we're at home, whether we're on the bus, whether we're at work, everyone talks about AI. What's fascinating about AI is it is most fascinating phenomena we are witnessing in our lifetime since .com. The only difference is .com was not as fast, was not as creative, and was not as available at our fingertips. What I would like to share is the most important asset in our organizations will always be our people. The question we often ask is our workforce ready for AI? Do we have enough training and empowerment given to our staff so they can use the tools, so they can understand the impact of vulnerabilities and threats AI tools bring into our organizations, and also understanding of how to better use tools for more productivity at work. If we have a look at the global numbers versus where we're at in Australia, we are traveling pretty close with the global numbers. If we have a look at the very bottom workforce training, we're only 24% against 40% globally. With thousands of tools available at our fingertips, it's important to make sure that we have awareness and visibility of what tools are being used and what is the impact of those tools and how we can actually integrate and create visibility so it creates impact for our organizations and also protect our organizations from threats. Gartner already predicted that by the end of 2026, 40% of cyber breaches will stem from generative AI sources. So that's something to think about. If we have a look, we talk quite a lot about AI adoption. So what does it look like from the boardroom? A lot of CEOs already putting aside budgets and planning to create adoption strategies for their customers, for their businesses, and across the industry and the channel. We already have over 1,500 businesses registered in Australia. And if you haven't had the chance to have a look at the National AI website, please do. We already have an AI directory and a lot of businesses already registering, and it's a good way to introduce yourself to all the Australian companies that are flourishing in AI space. I'm not saying this because Lee is here, it's because it's a very good source of information to have around AI. So what's important? This is probably one of the most important topics I would like to cover. When we talk about AI and adoption strategies and tools we're going to use, building agentic solutions, custom agents, or whatever it might be, one topic we don't often discuss, the environmental impact of the solutions we're embedding. The reason why I have these two columns, large language model versus focused AI. Large language model is your common GPT, Anthropic, Google, Geminis of the world that we use every day. The focused AI is the small language model, very focused, specific to a task. If you have a look at the questions, you can ask one question using ChatGPT, and that will be equivalent to 2 hours of lights living on, versus lights left for 5 minutes. That is the environmental impact. If you need to prepare a contract, internal document, without any images, that's equivalent to printing 10,000 pages versus just 10 pages that you require for the document. And the examples go on for, it's even worse when you're printing an image, or if you are in a marketing or in a video industry. Every single image we create, we look at it, we don't like it, we go back and we create the document again, and the cycle goes on and on. The importance of having the right training, whether it's prompting, whether it's understanding what is the impact, environmental impact of embedding agentic solutions in our businesses, that's quite powerful. It will cost you less in the long run. The focused AI and small language models are operating under 8 billion parameters. So if you think about parameters, that's like a brain cell. The ChatGPT is operating on 175 billion parameters. So it's a monstrous brain that knows everything. So every time we ask a question, it goes all around the world, looks for the information in a black hole of internet, comes back with a response. The response can take between 1.5 to 5 seconds. And every second in an organization has an impact on your CPU, GPU, depending on the adoption strategies you have. In focused AI stage, the small language model doesn't have to go all around the world and look for an answer. It goes to a specific source, it takes the information and brings it back in less than 1.5 seconds. And in monetary space, when you're looking at thousands and thousands of dollars spent on agentic solutions or custom-built solutions that we are heavily investing in, that's thousands of dollars going into something that is not necessary. Having a professor to answer the phone, it's a bit of an overkill. So think about hybrid solution next time when you're thinking to implement AI in your organizations, because that will have a lot of impact on the environment if it's in a hybrid stage rather than just heavily reliant on large language model. There's a lot we can talk about AI, and you can see the carbon footprint impact large language model versus small language models, and that's a quite interesting topic, and we can talk about this for hours and hours. I guess the important message is whether you're halfway through embedding AI solutions, whether you already have solutions embedded or planning to do so, think about the hybrid solution. Perhaps large language model is not always the best solution for the business. On that note, I would like to introduce the person who is responsible for this hot topic, the head of National AI Center, Lee Hicken. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Good afternoon, almost, I think. Yes, just about afternoon. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, and it was the winter of despair. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. Now, when Dickens wrote those words, he was describing the turbulence of the French Revolution, but let's face it, it's a pretty good description of the world we find ourselves in today. AI is spreading, it's growing to become integrated into our lives in both good and really less good ways. AI has become the most compelling technology of a generation that has the potential to solve many of humanity's greatest challenges, whether that be revolutionizing healthcare, education, transport, or many more. We've developed amazing AI tools that use generative AI to explore knowledge and data in ways and scales that were just previously inaccessible to all of us. But at the same time, AI has become the accelerant to the fire that is lit by those that are seeking to do us harm. In the wrong hands, it's a mechanism of misinformation, of disinformation, and worse still, it is a new and intelligent cyber threat. It is both a tool and a weapon. AI and security as technologies share many similarities and patterns. I believe we can learn much from the acceleration of cyber defense technologies and techniques that might apply to how we wrestle to control over our AI future. Indeed, we've already taken on concepts like red teaming as a core method of battle testing AI systems. But let's consider the differences, though. The first computer virus was released in 1971. It was called Creeper. It didn't really have a malicious payload, it just propagated itself for fun. And in 1972, Reaper was written as the first antivirus designed to detect and delete Creeper. It wasn't until 1983 that we actually called them computer viruses. And the first commercial antivirus product was sold in 1987. It's called Ultimate Virus Killer for the Atari ST, for those of you old enough to remember. But let me speed things up to be brief. Throughout the 90s, we saw the explosion of virus and antivirus software. We relied heavily on things like MD5 hashing, signatures to detect virus code in systems and software. By the 2000s, we saw virus technology and organized crime come crashing together. I Love You, Code Red, Slammer. I can see anyone who shudders a bit when I say that, because you remember those days, as I do, and many other infamous cyber attacks based on virus and worm-based. Antivirus, of course, met this moment with the development of heuristics, behavioral monitoring techniques, and detection patterns as opposed to code detection patterns. The malware got smarter and adopted polymorphic code and rootkits and other things. Eventually, by the 2010s and beyond, malware had become big business and was written as a nation-state attack vector. And whilst the underlying technology remained largely the same, hidden code, evading detection, zero-day exploits, the impact, the cost, and the value of the attack became so much bigger. So between 1971 and today, some 55 years, I know that because it's the year I was born, we have seen an ongoing escalation of these tools, of the weapons in cybersecurity, eventually becoming an environment that we just accept as the cost of living digitally. Now let's compare that with AI. Whilst many would argue, and it's true, that AI has been in development since the 1950s, and it's absolutely true, it has, the adoption of AI, and more specifically generative AI, and the acceleration of AI as a malicious tool is a relatively new jump from simple exploits to global nation-state attacks that's happened over just less than 3 years as opposed to 30 years. It's been almost exactly 1,000 days since OpenAI released ChatGPT, and in that time, we've gone from pretty basic, by today's measure, chatbots, akin to that sort of creeper virus of 1971, where it just impacted 28 machines on the ARPANET and nobody even knew it existed, to the development of autonomous AI agentic systems that are being given permission to act on our behalf, navigate their way through complex digital systems, much like the worms of the 70s and the 80s did. And they're being treated like they are highly capable, super intelligent systems. It's that rapid scaling up of both the technology's capability, coupled with the rapid propagation and diffusion around the globe and into our digital lives, that presents the single biggest risk of AI. We are moving so quickly to escalate AI's autonomy that we're unable to keep pace with the tools needed to keep it in check. So given this context, I want to look briefly at and deeply at one particular attack vector for modern AI systems, that of large language model coding agents. So full disclosure here as well, I am crudely interpreting the words of a gentleman by the name of Nathan Hamill, who's a senior director at Kudelski Security, who wrote this session for Black Hat, and it was very well received. Prompt injection is a very well understood attack vector for large language models. AI systems that rely on interpreting language to determine intent are highly susceptible to malicious hijacking. The Air Canada refund incident, the Chevrolet AI offering cars for $1 are really prime examples of how language can be manipulated to create malicious outcomes. And AI coding agents, the attack can be far more hidden and invisible to both the developer and the deployer. In AI coding, where the attacker might not actually easily get access to the developer's physical machine or the development environment in which they're working on, a growing attack vector is activated through the agent's autonomy and the, frankly, slightly lazy approach that these agents take in terms of their scraping and capturing information from code repositories like GitHub and others like that. Techniques such as slop squatting, where a malicious actor can create an entire code repository with an almost believable name, with an almost exactly the same spelling name that any agent might easily believe to be the repository that the user was intending to, can easily be picked up by the coding agent. A watering hole attack where the malicious actor has enough information about the developer, tools they use, websites they visit, to exploit a gap in a legitimate site or system. They can be exploited. And the challenge here is the malicious instruction is not even code anymore. It's just words to exploit the AI's language attention model, the way in which it would interpret instruction. Simple things like white text on white backgrounds, obfuscated code in the repository, or hidden text that's physically not on the visible screen of the repository, but contained within the information scrape that the agent pulls from that, are all simple, easy, effective, and lazy ways to generate malware. They can be used to perform immediate malicious attacks on the developer's machine at runtime, install a backdoor, keylogger, or more concerningly, could simply inject dormant code. Again, they don't have to have the code, they just have to provide the written language in English language instructions on how to go and get the code from another GitHub repository or just create the code through language. All of that could be created and then deployed into the developer's code, lying dormant in trusted public commercial products that we have no sense of, waiting for a time in the future to be activated. Now, this isn't to say that AI coding and LLM coding agents are a bad thing. Far from it. As an ex-developer myself, I now struggle to convert my ideas into modern code, and I rely on coding agents as a way to accelerate that process. The point here is that we must not think about them as highly intelligent systems. The way that Nathan frames it, and I love his wordings here, is we must think about them as lazy, intoxicated robots. They're not going to check the details. They're inherently lazy. They'll seek the path of least resistance, and they will never have the same level of suspicious clarity that human beings have. So, as I wrap up, I want to kind of address this with, I lost my last slide. I didn't get my last slide added, and that was not helpful, was it? Since it's my whole slide about my company the team I run in the government. Let me talk about the National AI Centre very quickly. Established in 2021, it was a body within the government focused on building resiliency, capability, and confidence in Australian industry's adoption of AI. Some of you may be familiar with the Voluntary AI Safety Standard, a set of 10 guardrails that enables companies to think about the way in which they build AI systems, and we continue to evolve that. But just as it is with cyber resilience, AI resiliency is about knowing the risks, managing that risk, and adopting good practices that are designed to both make the technology safe and practical, but also a valuable enhancement of that platform. So my ask of you all here as security professionals and practitioners is lean into the AI opportunity. Help bring the 55 years of experience that the cyber industry has to the AI industry, and we'll move together faster. Thank you.
I would like to introduce our next speaker. We can't wait to hear Stephen speak. A CEO of Atturra, Stephen Kowal.
Thanks, everyone, for having me here today. I've been asked to kind of share my perspective on AI and the challenges around navigating AI going forward. I'm happy to share that perspective, especially following Lee, not as a technologist, he's far better than me, but as a father, Australian citizen, and CEO. As you're all aware, AI is no longer a buzzword. 2/3 of Australian companies are already piloting or scaling solutions. 3 years ago, it was under a third. The question now is not if AI will reshape our business, but how quickly and how effectively we adapt. So let me introduce myself. As mentioned, I'm Stephen Kowal, the CEO of Atturra. So over the past 6 years, Atturra has grown from a private IT business of a few hundred people to now we're an ASX-listed advisory and IT company with over 1,200 staff. We're proudly Australian, we're passionate about building sovereign capability, and we deliver nation-changing projects within federal government, defence, and are a leading provider in local government, education and manufacturing. And while that journey has been exciting to date, I think the next few years will be even more transformative as we enter our generation's equivalent of the Industrial Revolution. We have revolution terms in common, or more correctly, the AI revolution. So strangely enough, I think there are lots of parallels to the two industrial revolutions and the AI revolution. Firstly, in both industrial revolutions, people predicted massive disruption and massive unemployment to the point of panic. In both industrial revolutions, there was significant short-term disruption, but in both cases, employment and different jobs emerged. When looking back at the Industrial Revolution, it was difficult to find reliable data, but several data sources implied unemployment peaked at around 25%, at which time caused significant negative social impacts. So not unlike many predictions around the AI revolution. Importantly, as you're all aware, unemployment did recover, however, with very different jobs that did not even exist prior to that change. As mentioned at the start, the most important thing we need to understand is not if AI, but when AI. It's a change that is inevitable. Our only consideration should be managing that change and the new future it creates. I was actually glad to see the level of acknowledgement of this inevitability at the government's recent productivity roundtable. My personal view is our role is to guide Australia through this transition with a focus on minimising the negative societal impacts, while at the same time minimising the period of disruption before the new normal. We need to do this at the same time while maximising the benefits of AI to Australia to ensure maximum prosperity for our future generations. But the reason I've provided this background and the understanding of my views and beliefs is it provides context around my view on what role we have as leaders and how we navigate these changes. To me, it is simple. The role of business leaders is to navigate this inevitable transition with a focus on minimising the negative impacts on our teams and minimising the period of disruption before the new normal. And for clarity, the new normal is not a stable state. The new normal is a state of accelerated change. So that's probably the perfect way to segue to how AI is impacting organisations and how it's impacting Atturra. So the first thing, and probably the easiest to understand, is who in this room is not busy, who finds it hard to fill their day and has no backlog of work. Yeah, that's pretty much what I thought. This is actually a really important starting premise. Because when I meet clients, their lists of objectives and requirements are ambitious and long and near on endless. In most cases, their list is only limited by the intersection of imagination and that of economic reality. No one's bored. This is important. Despite white-collar work disruption, which is real, in the digital age, creation and ideation is boundless. I believe we could triple productivity and we'd still have more to do. Yes, human-powered call centres may be gone in 10 years' time, but there will be boundless other jobs. Yes, the guidance to my children to learn coding 10 years ago turned out to be very questionable advice. Luckily, like all children, they completely ignored me, and still do, by the way. But as most of you probably know, that advice is really questionable because coding as we know it today probably will not even exist in just a few years. So what am I seeing when I speak to the majority of clients? It's interesting. It does not match the tabloid headlines. The conversations I'm having with the majority of clients is firstly, doing more with the same. Despite headlines, we do actually see a significant amount of doing more with less. Yes, there are several areas we do, but nowhere near the majority. In the majority of cases, it's maintained staff numbers or have a slow reduction through natural attrition. So despite the doom and gloom predictions, what we are seeing in the majority of sectors is more a shift in the workforce than a massive replacement. Don't get me wrong, this is not without its own issues. Because if we do not match the skills of our education system with the business skills needed, youth unemployment may become an even larger issue. The challenge is, of course, made worse because I'm not sure businesses really understand the skills we will need in 2, 4 or 6 years. However, what I do know with absolute certainty, things like creativity, critical reasoning, resilience, and EQ will always be in demand. The second major discussion point with my clients is all around providing a better outcome, be it in teaching, health, policing, customer service, or a million other things. As mentioned, AI is inevitable, and we are continuously engaged by clients to improve almost every element of their business, from the simplest business process to redesigning entire business models, but for the better. Now, we'll use a practical example, of course, push the Atturra brand. And that is the Atturra's Housing Affordability Accelerator, which helps governments and councils speed up development applications. We have achieved 70% improvements to date. With our next release in October, which further enhances our use of AI, we're anticipating an additional 20% improvement, taking the accumulated improvement to 84% from just 2 years ago. So interestingly, just focus on better outcomes. I see more driving changes in technology, really moving from deep technical skills to that of hybrid business technical skills, something ironically the industry has talked about for 20 years. Like COVID created the almost paperless office after 30 years of failure, AI is creating far more business-savvy technologists after 30 years of questionable progress. And our customers are no different to Atturra. We are running an aggressive AI program to optimize our business model, improve customer outcomes, and optimize our HR and finance functions in particular. Our focus is to support our 20% growth rate while minimizing the growth of overheads. However, and this is important, people are still and will always be critical. I think Kathy kind of touched on that before as well. I could speak for hours on this, and trust me, I get accused of it all the time, so I won't. But if I had to summarize, our philosophy is AI is an amplifier, not a replacement. AI creates efficiency and people ensure quality. So when navigating AI, ironically, the most important step is engagement with staff and customers, or in the case of government, society and citizens. Many studies refer to the high failure rate of AI programs, from RAND, which says 80% fail, to Gartner, that says 85%. And an MIT study actually just got released earlier this year, highlighting 95% of AI projects fail to achieve their goals. I believe this failure rate is more of a failure to engage and correctly run these programs. Although AI is a groundbreaking technology, driving successful change is not. So I'm going to manipulate a very famous phrase for older people anyway, from the US election, where they said it's not the economy it's the economy stupid. For AI programs, believe it or not, I think the appropriate phrase is, it's the people stupid. So we've got to make sure we focus on the right things. Do not treat AI differently when driving change. Treat it as a new, powerful accelerant to enable and accelerate that change. So where does that leave us? For Atturra, it will be a growth pillar, but we'll be cautious. We're choosing the right partners, building the right skills, and embedding AI where it makes sense. But we'll always have people in the loop. And I believe that's the way forward for all of us. Success with AI won't depend solely on technology, but depend on culture, skills, and trust. AI is already here. It's reshaping industries, redefining work, and raising risks. But if we focus on people, purpose, and practical outcomes, it has the potential to be the most powerful growth tool we've seen in decades. Thanks.
Our next speaker I would like to introduce before we break for Q&A session is a global coach, consultant, and neuroscience master, Tanya Kunze.
Thank you very much. It's amazing to be here with such high caliber people, and I'm very honored to take the stage as well. And thank you very much for being here. So if we consider neuroscience in its textbook form and not applicable, really just, educates us. So my purpose with my 34 years experience in corporate is to actually make neuroscience applicable and understandable, but particularly in the AI era. Let me just see if I can get this to work. There we go. So I'm going to put a concept to you. I'm going to put the concept of human AI to you. Now, I know you'll never have heard that concept before, but I want to try and unpack it for you. If we look at this configuration, that is a typical configuration of AI. Information comes in, it goes through a transfer function, and there is an output. Right. Pretty simple. Now I put to you a neuron, which also, by the way, has AI in it because it's brain, incidentally and ironically. Now, information comes in, it goes through the myelin sheath, and it has an output. So what's the differentiating factor between the human and the AI? Now, obviously, as we know, there are models where we pretty much model AI off the back of a neuron, but that uses mathematics to have this output, and we use a biological reaction to have an output. So there's obviously a difference, but it's bigger than that. We have what we call the freedom of choice. Use it, don't use it. Now, what is happening to a lot of people is they're stopping thought. I'm a thought leader. I spend a lot of time thinking. Now, we get a task and we pop it into an AI model and we get an output. And then we dolly it up a little bit and put the bells and whistles on and make it our own. But what's happening is if you go there first, it becomes generic. It becomes a sea of a concept. You have to think first, then put it through the AI methodology, and then have an output. That's your differentiating factor as a human, thinking. And so many people have stopped thinking. Another really critical dynamic is that we need to understand the power of left and right brain, and then we need to use neuroplasticity to engage and develop the medial cortex. So I've coached over 15,000 people on a global platform. A tremendous amount of them have been C-suite, but I have a motto in life: I'm above and beneath no one, and everybody is unique and everybody has something special to offer. So I have also worked with people that have been grateful for one meal a day and live in very, very meager houses, all the way through, like with Kathy, to Necker Island with Richard Branson. So that full 360 of the human experience. And the thing that everybody has in common is obviously the ability to live in the left brain or the right brain or the medial cortex. And with neuroplasticity and with EQ, we're able to develop that. Now, we've moved from the information age, which was the acquisition of knowledge, which school is based on, which university is based on. That information lives in the left brain. It's the acquisition of knowledge. And the right brain methodology was quite dismissed back in the day. That is the creative. But think about the word creative. I create a business. I create a solution. I create AI. And when that information comes into your neuron, before it hits the myelin sheath, you have a freedom of choice to create, moving forward from that, to create a solution. So we're moving into the conceptual age where the right brain is going to be needed more than the left brain. The EQ dynamic is so important, and whole brain is obviously the aim, to be medial cortex strong, to be able to shift from the left brain to the right brain with ease. What are the tools and tricks that we need for this to move from the AI information age into the conceptual age? We need to understand ourselves as individuals. Yes, there is I in team. Yes, we need to understand the I in team, because when you understand left and right brain orientation, audio, visual, kinesthetic within your group, when you understand whether someone's a driver or an influencer or a teamwork player, they can all be leaders, someone that's based on knowledge. There are so many dynamics of each and every human being that we need to consider and encapsulate as unique individuals within our teams as leaders, and then apply the AI. Because together, when you have this melting pot of both, and we integrate, but we think, we stand outside of the human AI circle. We stand as a powerful human. Use it, don't use it. Thank you. All right, now we're going to be moving into the Q&A, and I'd like to know if anybody here has any questions for anybody on the panel. Yes.
Is that a change? Is it different? And why is it different?
Who would like to take that?
Yeah, I like the way that you did.
Lee would like to take that.
Yeah. So look, thank you for the question. And I think from what I understand from the way you're phrasing that because I hear about the use of synthetic data in the building of next generation intelligent systems, as opposed to, I mean, arguably AI systems are by definition synthetic, since they're not, human in that sense. But yes, there's an interesting challenge. I mean, you would have all heard the statistics around the amount of data created. I think it was somewhere in middle out 2010 where we were at a point where we were creating more data every day that had been generated up until that point across the sphere of sort of human data generation. So we're reaching a point where we're generating a lot of data. AI is now becoming a huge generator of additional data that is feeding its way into our lives, whether that be AI generated books in Amazon or other things that have become the sort of the snake eating its tail. And we find that AI is reading AI to learn about the world and the human experience, which has a potentially, and I suspect Tanya would have a much better opinion on this, the collapsing of the sort of the value of the knowledge base that humans generate, because we're no longer a part of the loop. It's now AI talking to AI, learning from AI, and figuring out the world. So it's a very real consideration. However, there is a good side to it in the sense that things like small language models, and I think I heard some of the other speakers talking about this concept of small language models, large language models, AI is very helpful at solving the problem of making AI itself smaller, more compact, more transportable, and more usable in different scenarios. And that's a process of AI creating synthetic data that's highly dense, highly information-rich synthetic data that can be then used in smaller batches to train models that are equally as intelligent as the models that were trained on massive data sets. But I don't know, Tanya, if you want to comment on the issue of us humans coming out of the loop and not being part of the data chain, that would be
Absolutely. Thank you. So I think that really does lead on from what I originally spoke about. And the brain is inherently lazy, does not like to think. It takes a tremendous amount of effort and energy for it to think. And the more we lose moving towards whole foods, which takes energy to digest, we are actually starting to move less and less away from thinking. So a common thread that I've experienced is people like to try and plug things into an existing model constantly. So this trend of actually not thinking and not trying to problem solve. There have been some MIT studies that have come through where there have been MRIs done where they're showing the brain of someone that is really using a tremendous amount of AI and not necessarily going into the thought process. And there's definitely a dimming within the brain. There's definitely less activity in the neurons and so on. So it is critical for us to continue to stay ahead of the loop, but it's by activating medial cortex and whole brain through neuroplasticity and the right brain activation. But yes, please think it through, ruminate on it, practice the pause that Kathy was talking about to actually, is there a different way, ruminate around the table and understand the unique methodologies of each person that's in your cohort and bounce those ideas around a room before plugging it into a computer.
Thanks. Continuing with that theme, my name's Donovan, by the way.
Thank you, Donovan.
Thank you for everything you've presented so far. I'm interested in how AI is used in your decision-making circles, in your crisis management teams, in those, bringing the right subject matter experts together to get good situational awareness, to understand what's going on with the particular threat they're facing. What AI tools can they use to accelerate, inform, and enhance their decision-making?
Okay, fantastic. I don't know if anybody wants to lean into that.
I'm happy to talk. We use quite a raft of tools, but I think some of the comments I made before, I think some of the comments here is we always have human in the loop. We use it for idea generation, but interestingly, we never use it as a first step in idea generation because I think the brain is lazy, and if you table the ideas through AI, be an LLM, whatever, that actually limits the thinking. So way we tend to use it is actually post an ideation session. We then use, a heap of models, depending what we're specifically doing, to run it through and see if there's other iterations out of that. But importantly, we never start with it because it limits creativity.
Absolutely. We're so aligned. It's wonderful. I was listening to everybody speaking and having that same moment of alignment. And I think something else I've done, I've created something called the Brain Trust. So through a series of behavioral profiling methodologies, because I specialize in neuroscience-based behavioral profiling definitively within corporate, I bring together a group of decision makers based on several touch points with regards to how they think and how they are configured themselves. And we put them around a table, and I call that the Brain Trust, so that you really are seeing each perspective from every possible angle that the human could possibly see it from, because each of us see life completely differently. We're all sitting watching a different episode of a different series. And when you bring it all together, you get Netflix. So we actually really want to start bringing those people around a table. Your boards, your advisory boards should all be based on a brain trust, not only experience.
Thank you.
In Europe, there is the AI Act regulation that impose companies to invest in training in the so-called AI literacy, together with some other obligations such as human oversight and transparency obligation. So do you think that a similar legislation in Australia could help companies to manage and handle AI and the internal governance on AI? Thank you.
Do you want to take that one?
Me.
Oh,
Well, given it's government and legislation.
Yes, you do.
I suspect that's something that I should probably pick up. And the question was sort of related to the EU AI Act, but I think importantly, the key point you raised was actually the first phase of the EU's AI Act was actually focused on the requirements around training and skilling, which I think is a really key point. So setting aside the issues of the question of legislation, regulation, and whether or not we should go down that path, that is a decision for government. And I think, as Stephen pointed out, the government has made a commitment to make AI a national priority, which will span across all factors, including Jobs and Skills Australia, who recently put a report out on exactly where we need to think about that. But the short answer to your question is yes. I think the number one piece of the puzzle that is so important right now is enabling people to be literate or be resilient and be capable of using AI. I don't think we necessarily all need to learn AI skills. I don't expect everybody to become sort of deeply proficient in how to use AI, but everybody should understand what AI might intersect with their life and more importantly, know where AI shouldn't be used or where it's less valuable in a process. I think the process of learning is actually not to learn the thing, but it's to learn boundaries of the thing and what that thing can't deliver for you, because that comes back to the point about where you then fit in and you as the human being bring the contribution to it. So 100% yes, critical piece of it, and small plug for me, since I run the National AI Centre, which is focused on enabling Australian industry to drive literacy, capability, skills, and responsible processes, guidance in AI. One of the programs we're kicking off right now, in fact, we have a workshop tomorrow, is on developing a national literacy program around AI.
Amazing. I'd like to then please lean in. Thank you for that answer, and I hope that satisfied your question. I'd love to ask Anna a question based off the back of what you were saying, is how should leaders kickstart AI adoption effectively?
It's probably something that Stephen can answer. He does this every day. I would like to probably start with what I've witnessed overseas in particular. The conversations start in the boardroom rather than relying on capabilities that technologies provide, but focus on the actual problem and create use case scenarios and pick pain points and trial it and scale it and test it within a smaller environment first before adopting a strategy that will bring more measurable impact once the AI is adopted. So that's probably the most effective way to test and trial the adoption rather than go full scale.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the group?
No, but I will add one thing to that, because I agree with that approach, by the way, pilot approach. But the number one challenge we actually see is a lot of people don't know why.
Yeah.
So that digging into to why is actually really, really important kind of case. Like I call it the CEO Airline Magazine impact, is where everyone's read AI, therefore I've got to do AI. So why is where we really try to dig down early. But yeah, when you understand the why and what you want to achieve, that iterative pilot process is really, really critical. But I would say 90% of people don't know the why first. And the why drives so much.
Yep.
And, I was being a bit critical of some of those. The MIT survey that said 95%. I bet you in 95% of that 95%, they didn't know why they started it.
I love what you're saying, and it's true. When you're doing any rollout of strategy creation or anything within organizations, the why comes to the fore, and we know this and we use it. And yet with AI, because it's quite confronting, it's quite foreign to a lot of people, it's new, the adoption is low, according to Anna when she spoke in Australia in particular. So I'm actually going to ask Lee this question. Lee, by 2026, what will success with AI look like in Australia, do you think?
Gosh, I don't know. Well, I'll take a very personal view. What does it look like for me, since I have control of the National AI Centre, which is essentially a base to run some of that that ambition? Look, for me, I agree with some of the comments around the statistics. There's lies and statistics, but measurably, I would love to see Australian confidence in what it means for them and the opportunity in front of them just rise up a little bit. I get slightly hesitant of these trust surveys because I find trust is a very strange thing to measure, because you don't measure trust. You build confidence, you earn trust, but you can't really measure the amount of trust that you have. And people tend to respond to these surveys in particular ways. So look, for me, very simply, if we just started to sort of turn that corner of, look, I know AI comes with risks, but I know how to manage those risks, to Stephen's point on the why, I have a reason to do it, and the risks are not insurmountable, then I will begin to explore, experiment, build some confidence, build some resiliency. As you say, create opportunities. We're a nation of innovators. We have been for many, many decades. Why not now?
Fantastic. And leaning off the back of that, I'm going to ask Anna another question. So what would you believe, Anna, is the simplest way to build AI confidence in the workplace if we're wanting to see that adoption happen?
Probably the most effective way is to create industry-specific and workplace-specific training material. There are a lot of material available on the internet, a lot of companies are offering free courses. They're all relevant, they're all very important. But when our workforce is coming back from all these training sessions, they're a little bit confused, because the practical adoption of those training learnings in a workplace, there is a massive disconnect, because sometimes the tools we're using in a workplace are not aligned with the learnings that we have. In generally speaking, it covers a lot of awareness. It gives you responsible AI awareness, which is quite crucial, and the security awareness, which I talk about a lot. But I believe to effectively introduce a skilled workplace, we need to have customized solutions specific to the industry and the organizations.
Oh, I completely agree with that on so many levels. And I've actually seen that play out in organizations needing that, not the one size fits all, but that bespoke, customized is critical. And Stephen, which industry sectors would you feel would be disrupted first?
Well, we're already through this. I think education.
Yep.
I think education, because we've got to prepare the future generation, and yeah, I just think it's going to affect people like people who didn't understand screens, and there was that digital generation. It's going to be the AI generation. The younger kids going through today, it's just going to be another tool in their toolkit. Though my son, referring to one of the things you mentioned, was he came back from school the other day and told me they just were reading a survey at school that said there was a 45 to 50% reduction in critical thinking with people who were just using AI to answer questions.
I rest my case, Your Honour.
Yeah. No, when you said that, I thought that was fascinating, and but I was glad he had that thought. So he was thinking that's a really bad thing.
Yeah, it's something I've come across in the workplace. Having coached over 150 companies across sectors over the last 14 years, it's something that I've come across even before AI became such a topic, was people just didn't think. There was a model. They tried to squash themselves into that model, and then they wondered why it didn't work. And when you actually got people to sit down around a boardroom table, or even if it was in a factory, or if it was within a normal environment where it was a call center, for example, it didn't matter really what the environment was, whether it was at the very top or in the actual actioning stage of the company. People just didn't think. They were too scared to think in case there was a consequence or they could be wrong and there wasn't a textbook to back it up. And that is what I think a theme that's been running out to society, and we need to break away from that significantly. Lee, I have one more question for you. If there's a question, Kathy.
There's going to be 2 more minutes, and then we'll have to reset the room and everything for a 2 o'clock start. So, final question?
Kathy. For those who didn't hear it, how are we going to mobilize the workforce to have a voice with redundant systems that are sitting in place for a very, very long time?
Look, I think it's a good question. It would be a great one to have over a dinner and a wine, because I think you could talk about it for hours. But I do think one of the things is creating destruction and necessity will cause it to happen. So I think there's going to be those organisations that are going to be willing to do that. And I do think it's going to be driven by leaders and individuals, both in a community, in a company level. And those who don't, unfortunately, will die through that sort of disruption cycle. And I know I've talked about the Industrial Revolution. That's actually what happened then. There are a lot of companies that didn't want to go with certain organisations, and they all died. The Luddite movement, early 1800s, you'd be familiar with, right? That all disappeared. And government, obviously a very different era, did changes to try to encourage that acceleration. But if you look at all the successful elements out of the Industrial Revolution, it was actually individuals, not policy, that got us there.
I want to take your point. You're absolutely right. And a more modern example of this, because I remember this myself very viscerally, was as we got our hands on mobile phones in the early 90s, there were many, many people that said, why would I want this stupid thing? Why would I want someone to be able to contact me all the time? This makes no sense whatsoever. And of course, over the period of time, and that was a period of time that took 20 years, it's now a device that is essentially the only way you can communicate and exist in a modern world. In AI, that's happening over a 3-year period, not over a 30-year period, as I made the point earlier. But I think the critical thing is, to Stephen's point, is, frankly, you've got to step up and be a part of this. And there is no room for people in the future who just sit back and say, it's happening to somebody else. It's not my problem. You got to jump in, whether you're scared, whether you're terrified, whether you don't understand it, or whether you just, it's not your thing. I'm sorry, the world waits for nobody. And that sounds awful. And I would hate to have it put on the record, but that's the truth of the matter of the world we live in, is the world waits for nobody. And you either take the advantage and take the opportunity and seize it with abandonment and joy and excitement, or it will pull you along and it'll hurt and it'll be painful and you'll wish you picked it up properly earlier, but you got to do it.
Thank you. And on that note, I off today, and I wanted to thank Kathy very much for that last question. And Anna, would you like to make the final statements to close off today?
I would like to first of all thank all our guest speakers. This is an absolute privilege to have such amazing caliber of speakers today with us, and also for all the questions you asked. And hopefully you found the information very informative. And thank you to Agile Conference. This is the first time we put together AI panel, and hopefully you all enjoyed it. And thank you very much for attending.